I'd like to thank the Grace of Heaven, Virtues of Masters, Grand Predecessor, Transmitters, Lecturers, and all of you for giving me the chance to share this story today. So this story is called The Journey of My Soul, and it's told by lecturer Charles Shu. And that's a picture of him. And actually, some of our lecturers here have met him before. So this is a true story. Yeah. So he's from the other temple, the other Golden Thread Temple, and he's so this is a story that he told himself about he has like an own miracle story, and he wanted to share it with everybody. So I'm gonna do my best to tell as many details about the story as I can. So his background, a little bit about him, is that he's a lecturer that lives in America right now, and his story took place in 2012 in Boston. So a little bit about his educational background is that he attended UC Berkeley. He did research at Stanford Medical School. He gained his PhD and MBA from MIT, and he also had a lawyer degree and MBA from Harvard. So we can see that his background is very technical and very scientific. So that kind of sets the tone of how his story is.
And then he's the person under the principal of the MIT, under 25,000 employees. So when he go to the DC, Washington DC, for the meeting, he reports to the Secretary of Defense and Secretary of Energy Department, two departments. That's his position. He was
Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
He has a PhD, yeah. So.
And his PhD is electromechanical engineer, and also the auto degree and MBA.
So his story is that he spent 3 nights with Happy Buddha, and after these 3 nights, a lot of things happened. It changed his beliefs in the Buddhas and these miracle stories. It changed, he experienced something that science, which is his background, couldn't explain. And after these 3 nights, he was able to understand how we can change our fates. And he realized that for himself, he really needed to become a new person. And then he wanted to share this story to help others understand the profoundness of Tao. Okay, so that's the background. So he tells it in 10 chapters. I'm going to try to keep it a little bit short, but what happened was that before he was even born, he had this heart condition, and the main problem was that it was his nerves, and so normal methods of science and health cannot help him. His nerves would actually deteriorate and shrink, and eventually he could potentially go into shock and become brain dead. So he told himself, this is my fate, so what can I really do about it? And he knew that once he even got older and a little bit better, he would need to go under surgery. So when he was 18 years old, he attended UC Berkeley, and he did research at Stanford Medical School where he was studying, I think microchips, they're called. So the microchips, what he was studying was supposed to be a replacement for his nerves, which is the condition that he had. He studied and researched for about 4 to 5 years, and he actually came up with a pretty decent product, but the problem was the product wasn't FDA approved to be used on humans for a while. So he had to wait until he was 27, right? He was 18. So he had to wait until he was 27 before he could get the surgery himself to get the microchips. So his condition was actually very, very severe. If his heart stopped for 15 seconds, he would die. And if he after 20 seconds, if he had an episode, 20 seconds later, he would be brain dead. So it's a very severe condition that he had. And this year, when he wrote this, he was 45 years old. So he said that he actually stole many years of life from heaven.
So chapter 2. He was supposed to die at 39, but he was 45, and he tells us what happened that day.
So chapter 2 is called True Nature is Real. On October 22nd, 2012, at night, he had returned home to Boston while his wife and his kids were in their LA home. And that night, he had some heart problems, and he knew it was very severe and that he felt like he was about to die. And he said he was afraid to die by himself with no one by his side. And around 7:30 p.m., he was in a lot of pain, but he loved his physical image so much, his appearance, that he took a shower and even gelled his hair and put on his most expensive tie and belt. Okay, so I actually have friends who, they say that we should dress well every day just in case it's our last day on earth. We want to look good. All right, so he cares a lot about his physical appearance. So he, put on his best tie and belt, looking very neat. And in his mind, he knew that he was about to pass away.
Wow.
And he felt like this time he couldn't be saved. So around 10 p.m., he heard Happy Buddha calling him and telling him to go to his temple to do some bows. So even though he was very much in pain, he walked very slowly up these 3 flights of stairs to his home temple called Hengde Temple. And as soon as he got up to the stairs, the top of the stairs, he saw Happy Buddha. And he felt at that moment, that his spirit and heart was combined with the Buddha's heart. So he lit the 3 lamps at his temple, and he immediately felt like he was being channeled by Happy Buddha. All of his movements were very precise and accurate. And it was because his soul and his body was combined with the Buddha's in that moment. So he did 3,000 bows and kept thinking about the 3 treasures that he had when he had received the Tao. And he kept thinking and focusing on his first treasure and his Buddha nature. The next chapter. So chapter 3 is called Buddha Nature Left from the Heavenly Portal. So he knows that science can't prove that the Buddha nature exits from the first treasure, right? There's no scientific proof that happens, but we know it happens. So in this moment, suddenly, his spirit left from his first treasure, and it happened so fast that his spirit was floating in the air, looking down at his body, still kneeling on the floor. So he was still doing the bows when he left and channeled out of the body. And he thought it was strange that even though he left his body already, but he could still keep thinking. So we already left the body and he still has these human thoughts. And he asked himself, what is it that lets him think? So what do we think? Why is he still able to think even though he already left his body? So he realized that his thoughts were from his spirit, right? So even though he had left his body, he could still have all these thinking and these thoughts. So he looked down at his body and he thought, wow, I'm so handsome. So Happy Buddha had spoken to him in Chinese and said in a very loud, clear, and powerful, but gentle, like a father's voice, and told him, and he could feel that Happy Buddha's energy was so strong and so big. His aura could encompass everything in the temple, and you could even feel that Happy Buddha's energy could expand up to 5 miles. So Happy Buddha smiled down at him, and then they were able to communicate with each other with just their energies. So Happy Buddha said to him, can you let go? In Chinese it's 可以放下, to put down, I guess all his thoughts and all these, let go of all these things.
Ready to go big.
Yeah, so that's what the true meaning behind what Happy Buddha said was. So in this time, Lecturer Xu didn't think of anyone. All he could think about was all the responsibilities that he still hadn't fulfilled. He was thinking about all his responsibilities for his temple, all the living beings that he still needs to help, and he was thinking about all the Tao that he still needed to propagate, and he thought about his parents. So this one was what worried him the most because he felt like he himself was not filial enough, and that's why he didn't finish his responsibilities yet. He felt like there's still a lot of things on earth and affinities with people on earth that was still calling to him, and that's why he couldn't let go yet. So, his spirit's floating in the air between his body and in the air, and he's thinking there's still so many things on earth, I can't go back to heaven, and so he's kind of stuck there looking at his body from, in the ceiling area. So does he go up or does he stay down? He doesn't know yet. So he felt very stuck. Chapter 4. Called the Diamond Heart Transplant from Buddha. So Happy Buddha told him that your time is not up yet, but your heart is so damaged and rotten, it's basically dead. And then Lecturer Xu said, when he was on earth, he was so disappointed that his heart was already dead. He said that he was very rigid in the way he lives his life. 1 is 1, 2 is 2, and he felt that way his whole life. And he always felt like people around him were always bullying him, and vice versa. So he thought, the way he feels that everyone on earth, humans, are always trying to manipulate and trick each other. In his line of work, he reports to the Secretary of Defense and the #1 top scientist in MIT. So in that kind of line of work, you kind of have to think about war a lot and how to trick people, politics, etc. So he feels like everyone already has a bad heart and is already dead. So Lecturer Xu asked Happy Buddha, since your heart is already, my heart is already damaged, can you fix it for me? So he asked Happy Buddha that. Can you just fix my heart for me? Happy Buddha said, absolutely, I have to fix it because there's still so many things that you haven't finished yet. So Happy Buddha found him the best doctor in heaven. And he was like a doctor that when he was on earth was very famous. So he found this doctor to give Lecturer Hsu a heart transplant. So Lecturer Hsu, when he saw the doctor, he could see that the doctor's Buddha nature's aura is so pure and so white. And he could see that his heart inside his body was red and black. So what does that mean? The red heart is not a Tao heart, and that means he has like no distinction for kindness and compassion, no distinction for holy and mundane. You just learned that one with the 15 precepts, right? So he had no distinction for that. And then, but like the red one's bad, but not even that bad. He said the black part of his heart was the worst part, the worst one it could be. The black heart means that his heart is already worse than rotted. It's already dead. He said that the reason this happened was because his heart died on his path of cultivation. It died because this path is too difficult. He said, it's really not that hard to cultivate ourselves, but it's very difficult to propagate Tao to other people. He said that about 90% of Tao members would probably choose to just cultivate themselves. But if everyone did that and only wanted to cultivate for ourselves, the Tao wouldn't be able to continue on for very long, right? So that's why we need to come to temple. We need to cultivate and help other people so that we can keep spreading the Tao to as many people as we can. So then he said that we need legs like a rabbit that are able to run fast and far. And we need to have a big belly to be able to tolerate and accept everybody. He said this is actually very difficult though. And then he said, he's very lucky to be able to receive a diamond heart transplant, but he could see that there was a hole in it, in that diamond heart. And he told Happy Buddha, if you're going to give me a transplant, can you give me a better heart, a more perfect one? Don't try to trick me, I see the hole in it. So Happy Buddha didn't respond right away, but then told him and said, how about we just let the doctor put the heart in first, okay? And then we'll see. So Happy Buddha explained to Lecturer Hsu that when he was in heaven, there were two Buddhas that were always by his side. One of those Buddhas managed wealth, and the other one managed wisdom. And that's why in this life, he's able to have so many significant and rare achievements, right? He had a PhD from MIT, and then he has his JD from Harvard. It's very hard to find a combination that even on the world now, not that many people probably have that combination of achievements. So that's why Lecturer Hsu has all of these significant, is because he wanted wealth, he had wealth, and he had wisdom. Now, when he was in heaven, his job was to manage the 6th treasure storage room. Is that the right way to say that? Yeah, so the 6th storage room for treasures, I guess. So anyone who is reborn onto earth has to go through his storage room first to get their treasure. Okay.
About treasure, about wisdom. So when everybody coming down to the human world, receive a package, so you can see everybody has a different wisdom. We didn't know that until we heard his story. So he was one of the area in charge of this area, but there are many departments in charge of this one. But he's take care of his fixers, treasury, storage room. So everybody coming down to human world have different wisdom. Now you can see why. Because we all receive wisdom package before we coming down. Interesting, huh? I didn't know that.
So he said he knew everybody's treasure when they came down to earth, but he can't say it because it's heaven's secret. But he can share his own treasure. His treasure was that he had wealth and wisdom. And so he said that, young people, they like to ask themselves, why is it that some classmates seem to have it so easy when they're studying or they're doing homework? And he said it's because it depends on which treasure you get and which bodhisattva we have affinity with. So when I was in high school, I had this classmate who I would write down every single word that the teachers were saying, but the girl next to me, she was doodling, she wasn't even paying attention, but somehow she would do so well in school, and I asked her, how did she do that? Because I know she doesn't take notes. She said, when I listen, I'm just listening, and then as soon as I hear it, it absorbs into my brain, I just know it. I was like, wow, that's so impressive. So now it explains a lot. I have a lot of these questions, and I felt like the story really was able to answer a lot of these personal questions I had.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so it made a lot of sense what he said. So he said it really depends on what treasure we get and which Buddha we have affinity with. So his spirit, right, it was still lying down in the air while he was looking at his body, not able to go back to heaven either. So he saw the heavens doctor take out his damaged and rotted heart, and he replaced it with a diamond heart. And even though the diamond heart had a hole in it, he could feel it was very soothing when he was putting it into his body. And he felt his spirit's energy become stronger and stronger. And he felt that his connection with Buddhas was also getting stronger. But then suddenly he had a human thought, and he said, if Buddhas are giving me a new heart, what kind of payment are they expecting? So he said, what will I have to do to pay off this new heart? So he was surprised that the happy Buddha responded and said, you can go back to earth first. We'll see about the payment. We'll see. So as soon as his spirit went back to his body, he continued to bow. Right? So when he left his body, the spirit came out of the body. He was technically dead. There's no spirit inside. His body was dead. But when he came back to his body, it was alive again. And he realized in that time, in that moment, very clearly that he has an opportunity to use this body to finish all the responsibilities he didn't get a chance yet to finish. Okay. Chapter 5. 3 treasures are real and making vows are real. So he said that when spirits do these reunion scriptures, they're always emphasizing to us that we need to cherish, our physical body. It's because that's the way we can cultivate well in this lifetime. But he said, sometimes when spirits visit us in dreams, we don't really believe it. He would say about 100% of the people probably would not believe that it's real when these spirits come to visit them in dreams, right?
Especially our ancestors give pass the message through the dream to us, we will not believe that's true. That's what he is talking about. He said most people will not believe it. Yeah.
So he said he felt like the world was very disappointing because humans have a hard time telling what's real and what's fake. But he said he has to share with everybody that the 3 treasures are real. The heavenly portal is real. The Tao we receive in temple is real. The vows we made to God in heaven are also real. So he said those that are sitting in temple, they all made vows and they cannot escape from those. So everyone sitting in temple had made vows to God before, and we can't escape them. No matter if we come to temple or not, we cannot escape the vows we've made previously. So he would continue to do 3,000 bows and another 3,000 bows. And sometimes he felt kind of lazy and wanted to slack off and stop, but suddenly his diamond heart would start to hurt. And it would hurt so much until he reached his 10,000 bows. So my mom had told me a story, the Monkey King from Journey to the West. He has this gold crown, right? Is that what it is? And then every time he did something bad or inappropriate, it would get very tight on his head and start to give him very bad headaches, right? So it's kind of like a hint to all of us. We all have something like that. It's not a physical thing, but when we, go against our Buddha nature, sometimes it causes us pain too, right? Every time we do something that's not with our conscience and our Buddha nature, we might feel guilty. So Lecturer Shi said, so when he finished his bows and he started walking around, immediately his spirit came out again. Why? It was because the happy Buddha wasn't done speaking to him yet. And he didn't want to use the method of visiting him in his dreams. Lecturer Shi wondered why he hasn't been able to visit absolute heaven yet at this point. And he realized it's because there's so many things on earth still tying him down. So he realized going back to absolute heaven is not so easy. Happy Buddha told him, you have a 3-day chance to go with the Buddhas and to record everything you see, hear, or anything the Buddhas say. But once he returns to earth, it's his duty to share what he encountered. So if others are asking him to share his story, even if his throat is dry and he's tired, he has no choice. He has to share his story. And Happy Buddha specifically asked this of Lecturer Shi because he knew that Lecturer Shi doesn't like to share these kind of miracle stories. And, in the past 20 years of Lecturer Shi's lifetime, he had so many things that happened to him that were miraculous. But never once did he open his mouth to share it with other people because he was embarrassed to talk about those kind of stories. So he knows, if he thought if he shared these miracle stories, nobody would believe him, right? And so he was afraid to say it, especially because of his scientific background. He didn't want to look like kind of foolish. So he knew it was a big struggle for him, but Happy Buddha asked him to do it, so he agreed. He wondered why Happy Buddha made an appointment with him for 3 nights in a row, when he suddenly remembered that in the past, he would also have to have appointments in order to talk to people. He had to make appointments. He would ask his parents to make appointments to talk to him. And if parents didn't make appointments with him, he wouldn't speak to them. The only people who didn't need to make appointments were his children. So anyone else, anything else, required an appointment. So chapter 6 is called The Amazement of Absolute Heaven, and Buddhas Are Not Aliens. So on the second night, around 7:30 p.m., he did the same thing and lit the 3 lamps in his temple. He thought to himself, for sure, tonight I have to go see Absolute Heaven. Okay, there's no way I'm staying just in this home temple tonight. After one bow at his temple, his spirit immediately came out of his first treasure and went to Absolute Heaven. How did he know it was Absolute Heaven? He said because his Buddha nature was connected to heaven, so he knew immediately. Because he had actually been to Absolute Heaven many times in the past, but each time that he'd gone, he would pass through the south gate of heaven. The south gate is where everyone has to go when they pass away, and you have to tell them the 3 treasures that you know and who your introducer and guarantor is, right? Is that right? Yeah.
The 3 treasures.
Yeah, in the south treasure.
2 cones will be guarding that gate.
Yeah, so south gate.
Yeah, the monkey king is guarding that gate.
But this time, he didn't need to stop at the south gate. Happy Buddha took him right through the south gate to go right into heaven. And it's because Happy Buddha already knew that he knew the 3 treasures and who his introducer and guarantor were. So a little description about heaven that he wanted to share was that when he saw the flowers in heaven, every single color correlated with a different smell. So it was kind of a hint that there's things that science cannot explain and that defies earthly logic. He said the smell of flowers have colors, and colors have sounds, and all of these things would confuse our earthly 6 senses. In Absolute Heaven, they don't use their eyes to see, they don't use their ears to hear, they only use their Buddha nature and accept everything as it is. So we don't need to use analysis to try to understand things in heaven. We just accept them for the way they are. Your Buddha nature already knows them. And he said, let me tell you a secret. The reason why I have affinity with everyone is because our energies are all the same frequency. And he said, aside from that, everyone in temple is for sure a Buddha or a split spirit from the Buddhas. On the second night, Happy Buddha told him in the future, don't tell people that Buddhas are aliens. So I think he had, used to say that Buddhas were aliens because he didn't understand. He thought they lived in the stars and must be an alien. So after these encounters, Lecturer Shi was sure that Happy Buddha was not an alien, but actually a grand energy. He said that he used to spread false statements that Buddhas were aliens and that was a crime. Every person's spirit is from the Buddhas. So if we see someone we can't stand or we like or dislike, then it's a creation of our own human mind. If we're able to bring out our true nature, then we'll never have feelings of like or dislike. And it's because true natures are ultimately, they're all the same. So he said good karma and bad karma are from our own choices. We decide if we like or dislike something, and in the Buddha's world, there is no like or dislike, no positive or negative energy. There's only a little bit or a lot of energy. So very similarly, like he said, Happy Buddha's energy, he was so big, right? So in chapter 7, it's the good karma, he calls it the good karma and his heart results from his diamond heart. So Happy Buddha had told Lecturer Shi that, because of his new diamond has a hole, he has to go home and do 10,000 bows. The first night, he had to do 12,000 bows. And the reason, he told Lecturer Shi that those bows aren't to the Buddhas, but to himself. he said that those bows are also for the people who you brought into the Tao and their ancestors. And why should you thank them? He said it's because this diamond heart is because of all these people's good karma with him, so he could have this diamond heart. In his words, he said, my diamond heart was made by thousands and thousands of little droplets of faith. I think it's called 出法心, from all the people and non-people such as relatives and friends who have passed away. And anyone that I have ever spoken about Tao throughout my 45 years of life. So each little droplet contains the purest heart from that particular person and being. And little by little, his diamond heart was made. So that's why it's called a diamond heart, is because of those droplets from each of the people that he helped. So, but, why does his diamond heart have a hole? Happy Buddha told him, it's because it's to remind you that you received the Tao because it was good. But then you forgot the vows that you had made. You started to believe it was all a fake and it was a lie, even though it was difficult. The heart of a loving Tao must be consistent until we pass away. So this hole is really to remind you, Lecturer Shi, about why all the things that you had forgotten. The second reason it has a hole is to remind you to be kind. So he said the heart itself is not very big yet and not strong enough yet, because Happy Buddha had told him that he had lost faith in the Tao and in human beings. So even though he continues to go to temple and help people, and he does all these holy events, but his heart was no longer in the Tao truly. And he said that his heart was dying because of his strong doubt in people's faith and in the Tao. So it's really important, as cultivators, we must not lose ourselves on our path of cultivation, right? We always have to have confidence in the Tao and in the Buddhas. So he said, why is the heart so shining like a diamond? It's really to remind us that we cannot let it accumulate dirt, right? So that's metaphorical, but it's truly saying when we cultivate and we see all these things on the earthly realm, right? These attachments or, our sixth senses really are creating desires and causing us to do, sinful things sometimes. But we have to do our best to keep our Buddha nature clean, just like the diamond heart. So chapter 8, heaven does not keep any Buddhas. So Lecturer Shi wondered why in absolute heaven he didn't see any Buddhas. And it's because every Buddha in heaven had already come down to earth to fulfill a vow to help people on earth. So the only Buddha he saw in heaven was Happy Buddha. And Happy Buddha's spirit was so big it encompassed him, and he could see Happy Buddha from every single angle. So this was really to show him, that was when he understood that Buddhas are always next to us. They're just an energy, so they're everywhere. And he said, Happy Buddha said that there's so many wars, tsunamis now, and many people are dying, are being killed in these calamities. And Happy Buddha didn't want to scare everyone, but even in New Jersey, there was Hurricane Sandy. So this was around 2012. And Happy Buddha had said that in the future, there will be wind disasters that affect the East Coast. And it'll keep occurring because people's hearts are rotted. And then Buddhas worry about us all the time, but they're always doing their best to help us. So how can we help the Buddhas? Happy Buddha asked him, are you able to affect 3 people? Are you able to get them to give up being a bad person, bad thoughts? The point is, if everyone could reach out to 3 people, right, if everyone here, if we were all able to reach out to 3 people and help them do good things, and then those 3 people helped another 3 people, that's how we can spread kindness and goodness and spread the Tao so that, it can really help the Buddha's job, make it a little easier for them. On the 3rd day, Happy Buddha brought him to one side of absolute heaven. This side is called paradise, and it's where all the angels live. So Happy Buddha let him look at the paradise, and he was shocked because he thought, angels would look like babies or kids with wings or beautiful women, handsome men. But he didn't realize was that angels can look like anything. And angels are actually the ones who clean up people's garbage. By garbage, he means their bad thoughts and stuff like that. Then he saw that many of the angels were doctors and nurses on earth. And why is that? It's because doctors are constantly treating people for infections and they get contaminated too. And a lot of them pass away from exhaustion. But actually, he said, we're all heaven's angels, every single person. Those that live among angels are also lawyers and finance people. They were all in paradise. Happy Buddha said everyone on earth is equal, and each person is someone else's angel. So we are all angels for somebody, right? Even to each other, we're all angels. So that's why we should respect everyone and every person we encounter because they are all our angels. So Lecturer Shi said he had a question in his heart at this time. I think this is a question we also brought up in English class a few months ago. He said, if he comes across a beggar and he uses that money, he gives him money, and he uses that money to buy drugs or alcohol, what should he do? Should he give him the money? So what do we think? Paul.
If you give him a couple of bucks, it'll give him a moment of happiness, no matter what he does with it, but he can forget about his problems for a little while.
That's good. That's a good point. What about everyone else? What would we do? What do you think the right answer is?
And usually when you pass them by, you feel guilty anyway. So
That's true, too.
case closed.
What does everyone else think? If we see a beggar and they're using the money for something maybe not appropriate, what should we do? Nothing? Don't give to them?
Usually if they're smoking a cigarette, I don't give them any money because they can afford to buy it back.
That's true.
15 bucks.
So Happy Buddha had said, why does this beggar come across your path in this moment?
Karma.
He said the reason is because that person is your angel. Even if they're buying drugs, that has no impact.
I feel like they attract to me. I drive a cab and all day
They
long,
like-
so I carry extra hours just to handle.
Sometimes it's, your energy is so bright that they feel like they're attracted to you. So that could be why too. So a Happy Buddha had said, even if they buy drugs and alcohol, that has no impact on why you're encountering him today. Okay, so that kind of gives us a hint that our Buddha nature is so kind that we would just give them money. We don't question and analyze, like, what is he really using this money for, right? If we're like truly using our Buddha nature as our master, then we would just say, out of our kindness, try to help this person, right? So he said this was really an important lesson to him. Everyone is everyone's angel. Because he said in his mind, he's very scientific, so he likes to categorize people. Male, female, rich, poor, smart, not smart, white, black. That's what he likes to do. He categorizes people.
Can I ask a similar question?
Sure.
If we come across someone who's like habitually a beggar, you see them there every day, like near the exit of the entrance of the highway. They look so healthy. They even are dressed, decently. I don't know. Sometimes, people will say if we give them the money, then we kind of encourage the laziness. So
That's true.
that has some kind of societal impact, I guess.
It does.
I don't know.
I think it's very
really-
tough, yeah.
I see it a lot, and there are professionals that make a lot more money than me. And
The other
there
thing,
was a lady when I was growing up on Cross Bay and Liberty in Ozone Park. She had a real weathered look, and she was there all the time. Everybody gave her money. And one time on Easter morning, I saw her in the bakery, and it was 9 o'clock in the morning. She still had the whole day to go. And she was counting her stacks of money. And when she left, after like 20 years, her son took over. And he always had a crease in his pants. When he tried to look like he was poor. And they owned a house, but you could kind of spot them. But every time you gave them money, it helped you anyway. So it wasn't for them, it was for you.
the other thing I think Buddha said was that the true merit do not worry about fake mark. What does that mean? The true the merit do not worry about fake mark. It means 正行功不怕小和尚. Okay, so you really want to do it because you are our Buddha, our kindness, you want to help people. Whatever they do, there's nothing.
Yeah, you could do that.
Nothing affect us at all. Okay, it's separate. Okay, we try to help them, but it's up to them to do what they're supposed to do. Okay, but this true merit do not worry about fake monk. Because monk could use money to something else, maybe do some other thing. So Buddha mentioned try to help them, nothing to do with. Okay.
They're making bad karma because
Yeah.
they're taking advantage of people's kindness.
Okay.
I read a newspaper, I think that many years ago, right? One snow day, the cup. So homeless he was poor. He wear a very thin clothes, and this cup just for the snow boots for him.
Yes.
And then end up the second day, they find out this guy has owned an apartment in New York, right? And then he has tons of money, right? He's kind of rich. And he just pretend that he does not have a clothes, very poor. I feel so sad to look at. He really used the people's sympathy.
I think the main point is that, let our true nature be the master when we make decisions, right? Don't use our human mind to say, oh, this person doesn't look that poor. Just be kind and giving. Also use your wisdom, though. If you don't feel comfortable giving to them, then, move on. It's okay, right? We gotta use our wisdom, but also use our true nature more, okay? So he had said that, everyone is everyone's angel, and it could appear in our paths at any point. And he said that, it could be a strict teacher who beats you. That could be an angel. Or it could be a criminal asking for your forgiveness. Or it could be a crying, screaming child. They could all be our angels, right? So when we see people that we may not like or dislike, we have to remember that they could be our angels too. So chapter 9 is parents are our most eminent people, meaning that they're our most important, significant people in our lives. Happy Buddha asked 8 angels to give lecturer Shi 8 pieces of advice. So I know it's a little small, but maybe you can read it on the paper. Okay, maybe we just read those later in ourselves, but I really like these because they really kind of impacted him. So number 6, he said, God gives every bird its food, but he doesn't throw it into their nest. So lecturer Shi had originally looked down at these 8 pieces of advice. He looked down on it, thinking it was so simple and he heard it all before. But Happy Buddha had immediately asked him, did you actually do all these 8 things before, though? Do you follow them? And then he remembered in number 6, he kind of faulted on those too. He made errors. He said humans have a big mistake that we all make, and it's laziness. Not the doing homework kind of laziness, but the laziness of caring for others. So it's really important that we use these 8 pieces of advice from the angels and make sure that we self-reflect every day and say, have I done these 8 things today?
Those are 8 angels. Talk to him. Each one is from each angel. Okay? 8 angels. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I thought those 8 were very touching. I really liked them. So everybody read it in our spare time. So then suddenly, Holy Teacher appeared, and lecturer Shi started crying and crying. He was wondering, why did it take so long for Holy Teacher to appear? Right? It's his teacher. He should have appeared earlier. And then, is it because, he doesn't want me to be his disciple anymore? Happy Buddha and Holy Teacher said directly to him at this moment, said, you, lecturer Shi, is actually the most evil of all. Holy Teacher said to him, Holy Teacher cannot even save you anymore. That's why I asked Happy Buddha, the one who's in charge of heaven's realm, to come help you and shake some sense into you. That was the only way you would listen. Okay? At this point, Happy Buddha, the Buddhas had channeled into him and used him, kind of communicated directly to him. So he thought that he was a little bit more special. And the more he thought these kind of things, the more errors he was actually making. And he had this really bad habit that even when he had made an error, he still thought he was right. So he, at some point even believed that the Buddhas would never even punish him because he was such a useful and good tool. He was very proud of himself and thought very highly of himself. And he said that was the problem he had the most often. And then, right then, Holy Teacher sang a poem to him in English. So it's kind of long, so we can read it also in our spare time, but it's very beautiful. So he said that in our life, angels are everywhere. People of eminence are everywhere, right? Our parents, people around us are all angels. The 2 most eminent are our parents. And many times, we treat our most eminent people in our lives like a ratty dish rag that we step on. And we need to be careful of this, especially young people whose age is not very old, but they don't have much experience. So we should especially be aware of our parents' hardships that they have to face. And then he said that, angels we're constantly stepping on them, and, those are the Buddhas that we bow to every single day. When things don't go the way we want, we complain about heaven and people and complain, why did the Buddhas not protect me better? Why did the Buddhas not give me wisdom and wealth? So he said that, maybe if Buddhas had given me more wealth, then I would have a better life and I could cultivate better. So it's as humans, it's very normal for us to point fingers and place blame on other people and not reflect on ourselves. What did we do, right? So chapter 10 is compare and argue when we can just be cultivating and propagating Tao instead. So there's constantly say that we've heard that, women cultivated 500 years less. And is this true? So he had asked this, and then Holy Teacher said, don't ever say that again. From ancient times until now, men have a tendency to take things by force and put themselves first. And Happy Buddha pointed at Lecturer Xu at that time and said, yes, he does that. Yes, he does that. He is like that. And he's, the temple master of Hengde Temple, his house temple, and of Chengde Temple, which is the very famous one that we also have here in New York. And he said, of all the good male staff members, Lecturer Xi pushed them out one by one, all the male good staff members. Because he's very competitive, right? He has a very technical background. He has to be the best. So one by one, he pushed out all the good staff members out. And then Lecturer Xi started to sweat when the Buddhas were saying this because he knew it was true. So Happy Buddha gave him homework. The first thing was that he had to choose 3 males to motivate. And he said to try to pick someone that are easier to teach, that are younger, so then you won't want to compete with them. So he said the second one was to bring back all the men you did chase out, right? And help fix those relationships. Happy Buddha spoke very directly to him. He said that, we know that you did not intend to be this way, but you were already born this way, okay? He said that now is your vow is now to share your story, this new story, with everyone. Now, at the end of his report that he had written, he said he had a secret message that he wanted to share with everybody. Heaven had asked him how much longer he wished to live. And, each time that happens, they extend your life is 12 years. And he said that he's still not that old, and he already been saved once, so he already had an additional 12 years. He said he wants another 24 years, and then he'll be 69. And he had already gotten the 12 years when he was sick the first time. So Happy Buddha said, you cannot ask for more. Everything you've done has already been recorded by the Buddhas in like a bill book, a book of bills, every transaction. So he said, you were originally supposed to die at 39. So living to 69 is an additional 30 years. Plus, if you want another 12 years, you'll be 81. So Lecturer Xi said he liked 81. 81 is a good number. So he's going to, Buddha already gave him a hint, he'll live to 81. And that he wants to concentrate on himself and cultivate and keep propagating Tao and become a new person after this whole thing happened to him. So that's the end of his story. It's literally a report he wrote in Chinese. I did my best to translate a little bit. But, I think this story was really meaningful to me because originally I didn't want to tell this story because for me, especially young people, I think, in America too, we kind of look down on things we don't understand, right? Things we don't see, supernatural things. I'm like, yeah, it could be true. I don't know. But this is really kind of showing me that I need to learn things from Lecturer Xu too. Everything we do in our life, we have to have a more open-minded and broad heart so that we'd be willingness to understand more things that we don't understand, right? So, I'm also very technical background, and, I like that the Buddhas had told him, you specifically have to share this story because I know you don't want to, right? So for me, similarly, I may not be very comfortable telling stories, but for me, I learned a lot from telling this story too. So for me, I'm a very logical person. I like to dissect things, make sure if I understand it, then I'll share it. So there's a lot of things about Tao and Buddhas that we're not able to understand. Science can't explain it, but it doesn't make it any less real. It's definitely true, right? So I thought, for me personally, I need to keep working on my cultivation and try to really understand the profoundness of Tao. So if anyone wants to share their own personal stories or anything now, we can do that for a few more minutes.
I think to hear his story, I know his story. I heard his story. He made a speech in Taiwan in the Aztec College in our Tao Temple in Taiwan. So it's a touching story because his background, he's a number 2 person in the MIT. under the principal. And also report to the secretary of the defense, secretary of the energy department. And then with his background, like he's a lecturer in Temple. He's a lecturer. And then for his background, and he's already, because everybody, in his position, he's proud of himself. Like we say, we get temple regulation, very hard for him to be humble, right? Because he's so successful. So I know we are good to hear his story and also come back to reflect ourselves. Because his story going to help us. So everybody, send the Buddha will find a way to help us, to find a way to manage us, take care of us. Even we don't listen to them, like him. Holy teacher have a hard time to tell him. So Holy teacher have to ask Heavy Buddha to help. Okay, so a nice good story. I think all of us can learn from his story, can help ourselves to cultivate. Yeah. Don't wait until something come up, it's too late. Because he had a heart problem, big hole there. So we are all Buddha reborn. Everybody's an angel. Don't forget the Buddhas. Okay, we gotta help each other. Thank you.
As I get older, I also feel like the more I have faith in Tao and the Buddhas, before I would think that everything is in my control, I have to do everything, do the best I can. But the more you let go of those kind of thoughts and kind of let Buddhas pave your path for you, you feel a lot calmer every day and happier.
Anybody else? Share stories? Anybody?
Oh, we could be here all day.
Anybody want to share? Yeah.
I got one.
Yeah. Got 1 minute.
So the day of 9/11,
Yeah.
before that I thought the world was going to end in my lifetime.
Yeah.
So on 9/11, that day happened, and the experiences I went through that day, I thought it was going to happen that day. So I ended up in a church,
Yeah.
At the end of the day. It's kind of a long story, but I'll do the short version. And I went to the church, and I thought everybody would be praying, and nobody was in there. And I was angry at God. So I started yelling, "What did you do?" Because I thought 50,000 people were dead.
Yeah.
That's how many people worked in those buildings. And it ended up being a miracle. It was a small number.
Correct.
Okay, so for the rest of that year, every time I came from Manhattan, which was like every day over the 59th Street Bridge, I would go to these piers on the East River that they just had built in Long Island City. And I would pray, please God, help the men in this building fix the world. I don't want it to end, So that went on. And the anniversary of 9/11, I ended up inside the United Nations, kind of like somebody snuck me in, and looking out the window at the piers, scratching my head. And I met a Buddhist master there, Dharma Master Sin Tao. And because of him, I ended up here. We went to a banquet downstairs, and at the banquet, I ended up wandering up here. And next thing I know, everybody's around me, and I'm doing my vows. No choice. It happened.
I think when you were in the church, the Buddhas must have heard you and then sent you this
I shook
way.
everybody up.
You remember we have to do the pray at lunchtime? Remember talk about all those,
The
right?
3 things,
Yeah,
yeah.
3 things, right? Because this was happened in Taiwan, some accident, some tragedy there. So we asked the Holy Teacher what we can do. So that's what Holy Teacher asked us to do this, to pray at lunchtime. Later on, 9/11 happened after that. Let you try to know the history. Yep.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
that's the end of my presentation. If I said anything incorrectly, I ask heaven for forgiveness and for the transmitters and all of you to please correct me. Thank you.